All right, everybody. Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another exciting episode of the Strange Oddities Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew J. Haas. As always, guys, real quick, going to get all this great stuff out of the way in the beginning, as I always do in every show. Guys, I can't listen live exactly while I'm on the show, producing and broadcasting. If there's any issues that I don't know about, let me know. Private message me. There is a chat with me during the show. There's a chat available on Facebook as well as YouTube because we're simulcasting on both Facebook and YouTube. Guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Strange Oddities Podcast on the YouTube channel. Guys, we multicast and simulcast on Spotify, iTunes, where else? KGRA Radio. We're glad to be partnered with, and we play our show over at kgrradio.com. So check their website out. They have really great shows there. What's up, guys, in the chat? Guys, we have a great guest tonight. Before I introduce this guy, I've known him for quite a few years. I respect him a lot with what he does. I want to give him a nice, warm welcome. I want to welcome widely recognized exorcist, Mr. James Bishop Long. I'm excited to have him on the show tonight with Strange Oddities Podcast. It's been a few years since I've had him on a podcast, and I'm excited to have him. Bishop James Long, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on for tonight's show.
I appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah. No, it's great. We're going to have fun. It's a really interesting topic for a lot of people. There's a huge difference between paranormal TV and what we really do aside from stuff on TV. There's a lot of misconceptions about exorcisms and demonologists and, with what exorcisms do and, with all due respect to all those subjects. But I thought we would dive into the differences between a demonologist and an exorcist. But I'm just really excited to have you on the show. So, again, much respect for what you do. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's, and one of the things I've been trying to teach people for 20 years now about the difference between demonologists and exorcists, and there is a massive difference, actually.
Right. Yeah.
And one of obviously the biggest difference is an exorcist is an ordained clergy member, right, who has actually been validly trained to perform the rite and who's been given permission by their local ordinary, which we call bishop, to perform an exorcism, the solemn rite of exorcism. So now an exorcist, by their very title, is a demonologist. However, we refer to exorcists as exorcists and not demonologists. The reason being is because a demonologist is laity. Those are individuals who have not been ordained, but who have a calling to serve in the demonic field. And they want to help, cases. They want to help exorcists gather the information. And that's what they do. These people, it is a calling. It is a ministry. I've said it now for going on 20 years. Demonology is not paranormal. Demonology is theological. Mm-hmm. And I cannot stress that enough. It is not paranormal. And when you're dealing with a demonologist, that's a calling from God. That is a ministry that is very serious. And one should never take that lightly, ever, because this is one of the most, really, truly, it is an incredibly important ministry. And so that's laity. Those are individuals who have a calling to serve, and who want to help in demonic cases. Now, demonologists have no business performing rituals that only an exorcist should perform. And right. I am seeing that a lot in the paranormal, that demonologists will then begin to, we can do the solemn rite of exorcism, or we can do the minor rite of exorcism, or they have no business doing those rituals. And this is not my rule. I want to make that very clear. Right. I am not saying this is my rule. This actually is a rule of the solemn rite, of the rite of exorcism itself. So in the rubrics, we call in red writing, the rubrics, the rules, it clearly states in the solemn rite that if you're not a trained priest, and if you don't have permission by your local bishop to perform an exorcism, you have no business even reading this. Yeah. And the first form was written in 1614. So we're talking about a very ancient ritual, and that I'm seeing a lot of people in the paranormal calling themselves demonologists, but they really don't understand what a demonologist does, because they're going around performing rituals they have no business performing at all.
Right. So that was a great explanation, by the way. That's one of the reasons why I brought up the topic, because I knew you would have a great explanation for that. And like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions
Yeah.
between a demonologist and an exorcist, and what kind of permissions they need or what kind of training is required. And like you said, you have to be ordained, you have to be trained by the church, and all different types of things, and you have to have the okay by your who you're working for. But anyway, with that said, those who do not know who Mr. Bishop James Long is, I'd like you, if you don't mind, tell our viewers and listeners how you got your calling, and what made you say, "This is what I want to do." Did
Yeah.
you get a calling from God, or what was it that made you say, "This is what I want to do"?
Sure. Yeah. At 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a priest. There was no question about it. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that is what I wanted to do. I remember pointing at the priest and telling my mom, I want to do what he does. And that was a very early age. And at 9, I read my first book in demonology, and I didn't understand what it really meant, but I knew that I couldn't put it down. I became obsessed. And I knew there was something going on there. There was something. For some reason, I just couldn't put the books down, and I haven't stopped reading. I've read now for over 40 years on books on demonology, and I'm getting a lot of gray to show that's not good. I wanted to put a little black dye or something going on.
We're old school.
we're listen. I am old school. I'm old school to where when we went to the library, there were no computers. I mean, you did card catalog days. I mean, and if you don't know what a card catalog is, you're lucky, because they were oftentimes messed up and out of order, and that was a big mess. But that's how we found books. And but I read, and I knew I wanted to continue life. So I lived a little bit of life. I learned what it means. When I was 18, I decided to grow up before going into the seminary and learn what it means to pay a bill, learn what it means to pay rent. What does it mean to have all that stress? Because I knew that I didn't want to be right from my parents immediately to the seminary with no life experience. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to experience what life was all about, and how it can be stressful and how it can be also amazing too. And so I went into the seminary. I studied for 6 years in the Roman Catholic Church. I loved it. It was truly the best years of my life. I was taught by Benedictines. I was taught by Jesuits. I just absolutely loved it. Was trained in the rite. The Archbishop knew that I had a calling to serve as an exorcist, and he and I talked several times about me once I get ordained, and several years afterwards to start looking into possibly even going to Rome. But after 6 years, I kept thinking, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Mm. I'm a gay man, and I'm not going to apologize to anybody because of it. And that 2004, I came out public with my sexual orientation. People said, well, your paranormal career is over. I don't have a paranormal career. Yeah. I'm clergy. I do this for free. Yeah. And so I was not going to be in a church and preach at the pulpit against LGBTQ rights. I was not going to preach against women ordination. I was not going to preach about anything that I truly felt was wrong. So I left, and it's not been easy. Look, if I had stayed in the Roman Catholic Church and been a priest, my housing would have been taken care of. My car would have been taken care of. Insurance, food, all the bills would have been completely covered. And I would do ministry for the rest of my life, but I would be a liar. And I'm not. I refuse to live my life like that. So, and I want to be able to reach out to everybody. I don't care if someone wants to worship a rock, that's their business. It's not my right to shove my faith down anyone else's throat. But if they call me and say, Bishop, I need your help, my job is to go there and help them. And if they want to talk to me about Christ, I will be more than happy to tell them why I'm deeply in love with God, with Christ, why I developed that deep love for him. Yeah. And because unfortunately, it's been so distorted by so many men who have used the pulpit as a scare tactic and a judgment tool. And so this is one of the other missions that I'm doing in life, is to remind people, don't blame God for the actions of man. And man has done a tremendous amount of damage to Christianity, all for the sake, because they're pastors. And they are as much of a pastor as my dog, because they are as compassionate as Satan himself. Some of these pastors are absolutely horrible. So This is why I talk to people so much about when they want to know about the Christ that I know. It's important, very important for me to talk to them and explain where I am. So I've done 29 exorcisms for 20 years. And these are real exorcisms. These are not people flopping around the ground. These are actually documented. When I say documented, they've had a psychological evaluation by a licensed psychiatrist. I've had a medical team that was actually there with me during an exorcism to monitor the vitals. These are people who were absolutely validly possessed. Now, I've done thousands of home blessings, thousands throughout the 20 years. I've done the Ghost Adventure Show, the Bobby Mackey's, the Exorcism Live. I've done History Channel, National Geographic. I've done all Jack Osborne show. I've done all those shows for one purpose. For number one, I never got paid. And number two, I did it so I can promote the paranormal clergy that I started 20 years ago, which we have teams all across the United States. So if someone calls us from New York and says, Bishop, I need help, then I say, Rich Valdez, who's our director, say, hey, Rich, we got somebody in New York, and then he'll send a team out there. They will investigate, give the information back to Rich. And if Rich says to me, hey, Bishop, this needs your attention, then I will pay attention, because Rich Valdez is a religious demonologist, and he's very respected in the field.
Yeah. And you are as well, not only for your experience, but like I said, we had a little bit of conversation before the show started, and I told Bishop James Long that how much I personally respect how much he really does help people, like aside from the paranormal. Like, he's involved in a lot of like donating things to families that are in need, and with all the organizations that he works with, and the community service that he does, like it's so like very well respected, and just I want to say that again to, in front of everybody here on the show.
I appreciate that. I've been doing the homeless ministry for over 30 years now. I was a homeless shelter coordinator for a homeless shelter. I served also to help people find jobs. This is a passion, a deep passion of mine. And now for 15 years, I've been helping single moms, young mothers who just left an abusive relationship. And people say, well, why don't they just apply for government assistance? Well, they do. But if you've ever applied for government assistance, it's not like lickety split. Here you go.
No,
I mean,
especially now.
Yeah, it takes time. It truly. So in the meantime, they need to still feed their babies. They need to feed themselves. They got to pay the rent. They got to pay the mortgage. So that's why I offer my classes online. Right. So the funding goes to helping those individuals. This is simple. I got to tell you something. Look. I see a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of bad stuff. I see a lot of death. I see children dying. I'm a hospital chaplain. I see horrible, god-awful things that it's very hard sometimes to process. I do this ministry, the homeless ministry and the single moms ministry, because I need it for me, because that is where I see God. I see God there. I see God not in golden cathedrals. I see God when I'm giving out food to a homeless person and I've run out of food, and then another person who's right next to the other guy has no food, and they literally split a sandwich in half. If that is not God present, I don't know where he would be. And right. And when I see that, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. That's what gives me hope to continue doing the ministry.
Yeah. How can you argue with that?
Honest to God, I've told everybody, and I folks, please do yourself a favor. If you're going through depression, if you're going through stress, if you're going through like, what's life about? Do yourself this favor. It will be the greatest gift you give yourself. Go to a homeless shelter this Thanksgiving and pass out food. Serve food. And I swear to you, it will change your life. I promise you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you find yourself, and I'm sure you probably are, with the whole pandemic situation, do you find yourself a lot more busier with everything going on, which I'm sure you are?
Yeah, a lot of stress, and actually I've seen an increase in poltergeist activity, not demonic, but poltergeist, because poltergeist technically means noisy ghost, and that actually is incorrect. It's not a ghost at all. It's negative energy that someone is emitting who's going through extreme stress and anxiety. So I've had many poltergeist cases, and when you go to the family and you try to help them and you finally get to the root of the problem, what's really going on. You have to peel off all these layers to get to the real issue. And then you find out maybe the husband has been cheating, or the wife has been cheating, or they lost their job, or something of this nature. And it's extreme frustration and anxiety in the house. Look, energy is not hard to understand. Einstein even explained this. So let me explain it to you to the best way that I can. You're walking down the street. You see somebody on the opposite side of the road. You don't know that person, but you don't want to know that person. That person is emitting such negative energy. You're like, no, I don't want anything to do with that person. Now, vice versa. A person walks into a room. They don't have to say a word, not a word. But they just walk into that room, and their mere presence lights up that room, and people just flock to that person. They don't even have to say one word. People just flock to them. They want to be around them. That's all energy. And that's what poltergeist is, the negative energy that we emit that causes activity.
Yeah. And one of the things that frustrates me as a paranormal investigator, I've been investigating the paranormal for a little while. There's like a lot of misconception to, demonic presence and, demons, and, everybody thinks that because there's negative energy, it must be a demon. There's a lot of confusion as to negative energy and evil and demon. There's just major differences, and maybe we can get into that a little bit. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a big difference between demonic entity. First of all, demonic entity and poltergeist. Now they do mimic one another, but I've got to tell you, I love the paranormal. I do. I'm not gonna. I love some of the most amazing people that I have ever met in my life have been paranormal investigators who've gone out, who knock on people's doors, who leave their families to help complete strangers. Some of these people in the paranormal, let me tell you something, I admire. Oh my gosh, I admire them because they're willing to go out to help people that they don't even know, drive 8 to 10 hours, spend the time to help the family that's going through some real serious stuff. Man, that to me, those are the paranormal celebrities. Paranormal celebrity to me is not, you put a camera in front of them. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Oh my gosh, did you hear that noise? Okay, it's the toilet flushing. Get over yourself. Really seriously. I mean, that's not a paranormal celebrity. Right, I don't worship paranormal celebrities or, I admire them. I don't care how many televisions you've been on. I don't care how many people watch you on television. Paranormal celebrities are people who answer the phone at 2 or 3 in the morning and who are saying, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, I will come to your home. I don't know who you are, but my team will come out there and we will help you. Those are the paranormal celebrities. But at the same time, we have to be careful with constantly stating everything is demonic. And not only that, but folks, you got to understand, when you're a paranormal investigator, we see so much, but a lot of, a family who is not in the paranormal, who's not prone to this, who's not seen this and exposed to this, they may be legitimately frightened. And then when we come into their home, they're seeing us as the professionals, the experts.
We're the educators.
Right. We are. And then what happens though? Immediately, and I believe in psychics. I know friends who are very, very gifted psychic. Willie Winwalk, he's a brilliant psychic. Chip is a good friend of mine, and he's obviously a great psychic. But we got to stop immediately saying, there's a demon in here. There's a demon. There's a demon. Because once you do that, you put a family at extreme paranoia state. And then you have people who are saying, there's a demon in your home. And they've had no training in demonology whatsoever. But for some reason, they think they've seen a television show or two, and now they're an expert in demonology. We got to stop that because that's not pastoral. Just think, if the shoe is on the other foot, you got to be careful with what we say because these families are legitimately frightened. Right. And we have to be I tell the paranormal clergy all the time, and anybody that I work with, no matter what, you've got to be pastoral, meaning you don't do anything that's going to cause them extreme anxiety. You're there to calm them down. But once you say, I had a case not long ago where a team came in there and this person claims to be this demonologist and he's never had training. He's never had a true demonic case. Immediately, he said, your family, there's a demon and it wants to kill your children.
Oh.
And this is a single mom of 2 children, 2 small kids. Why would you do that?
I know, that's terrible.
Why would you do that? See, that really does bother me when people do that.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, sometimes we actually clean up messes after, people do that, because, like, you have to be very sensitive around families, because, like, they're scared. They're expecting you to be able to help them cope with what's going on, and you could cause more serious emotional damage, mental damage. There's a lot, they could get physically hurt. There's a lot of things to consider that they don't think about, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not taking any of the fun away from investigating or trying to help a family in an investigation, but you have a responsibility when you're there.
That's right. That's exactly. And people say they're empathic and all that other stuff. Well, if you have empathy, then why in the world would you immediately start screaming demon to a single mom with 2 small kids? She's already afraid. So why would you scream? And the whole purpose was to scare people, and so they can put it on YouTube, so they can become famous and get a television show.
Right.
We've got to stop. Demonology is sacred. And we have now taken demons and possession and demonic activity. We've now removed it from the sacred and moved it into the secular, so that, people can get a television show.
Right.
Stop. Yeah. There are some things that need to be left alone and respected as being sacred. And demonology is one of them.
Mm-hmm. And just the negative energy of that in itself can cause not only the family damage, but can hurt you as well. Like, you're involved, and you can bring that negative energy to you and your family.
Well,
it could go on and on.
My man, let me tell you something. It's one thing to have to deal with the effects here on Earth, but I'm gonna be very, very clear. There is an afterlife. I have no doubt in my mind there's an afterlife, and that if you are using demonology, and if you are using exorcist, if you're using this title to become famous in the paranormal, and that is your intent, I am begging you now, stop. Because if you continue that, you will be held accountable.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are so unforgivable, and that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
And we have moved away, it seems like, sometimes from the thought of the afterlife, and we want to prove the afterlife by investigations and all this, and that's fine. But let's also remember that our actions have consequences, and this is why I am always reminding people how sacred this is.
Right.
It is very this. I can't stress it enough, but in the end, if you're going to use demonology, and if you're going to use God, if you're going to use that as a way to become famous in the paranormal, then do not be surprised when you meet God face to face and he says to you, I know you not.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how serious this is.
Right.
And so that's the consequences, but it's also, as we said, the consequences of hurting innocent people. Let's just not do that. Let's stay focused on the positive.
On the positive, yeah.
And let's help families who are dealing with, and let's try to debunk. That's right. What I tried to debunk every single case that I have. I tried to explain everything what's going on. But then you have cases where you're like, okay, we have to look into the demonic realm.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. There's a question in the chat, actually, which I think is a good question, because, again, there's a lot of people investigating now. The paranormal community has grown very large. It's a global culture now within itself, in my opinion. Like, it's just huge. It's all over the world. Sure. I have a question from Anthony Simonelli. What do you do if you believe you're being attacked by a demonic energy during a paranormal investigation?
Leave. Look, there's when I was in the seminary, an old monk taught us, and he was brilliant, and he taught us, you never act with a doubtful conscience. You may allow an evil to occur. Now, here's what that means. You're walking down the street, you see an abandoned building, you're like, oh, there's windows busted out. So you thought no one's in there. It's abandoned. You take a rock. You have a doubtful conscience. You don't know if someone is in there, but you're pretty confident that they're not. You take the rock and you launch it right through the window, and you hear someone scream, and glass is just shattered all over a homeless person. You have allowed an evil to occur. So if you are a paranormal investigator, and certainly if you are the owner of the investigator, if you're going in and you have a doubtful conscience, something is telling you, stop, don't go in there, turn around. That, in my opinion, people say, well, that's your conscience. I think it's also a guardian angel saying, hey, look, you don't do this. Don't do this. You got to turn this around. You can call it sixth sense. You can call it your gut, whatever. I think it's our guardian angel saying, hey, this is not safe. You need to turn around. But we have free will. If we go in and we have a doubtful conscience, we can allow an evil to occur. One of our team members could be seriously hurt, or we could be seriously hurt. If you find yourself in a situation where you are being attacked by a demonic, well, first of all, there's a couple issues with that question. It's a good question, but let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. If you go into a home, you're going to know that there's a demonic entity. You don't need a psychic to tell you that there's a demonic entity present. You are going to know. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You will know. If you're not prepared to handle that, you shouldn't be going in there in the first place. Yeah. So that's the first thing with that particular question, because it implies then that you may not know that a demonic was present. You'll know. You will absolutely know. There's no guessing about it. But if you do find yourself in this situation, then you need to leave. You need to pray. I would pray the Our Father. I would pray the Saint Michael the Archangel prayer. I would pray that God remove any attachment from your body. As a Catholic, I would pray the Hail Mary as well. And that is how I would do. I would remove any form of attachment on me at all, any form. And I wouldn't go back in there again if I were laity. I just simply wouldn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say, go with your instinct, go with what you're feeling, because and the other thing, they can fool you. Like, you need to have strong faith and strong will, because you may think you have strong faith and strong will, but if you don't, you're vulnerable, and they could be tricking you and fooling you into many things.
And that's that's a very, very good point, because here's what will happen. Oftentimes, a paranormal investigator who has good intention, we have big hearts. Paranormal investigators who are doing it for the right reasons, really, honestly, we have big hearts. We just want to help people. But a demonic entity will play on those emotions, and they will toy with them. And what happens is you will say, well, I got to help this family. I got to help them. I got to help them. And then the demonic will reel you in, because it is manipulating those emotions that you have to help. It's manipulating. So then you stay in there. I've got to help them. And then before you know it, now you get hurt. The best advice is, if you find a situation that you're in a family and you don't know what to do, or you think that there's a demonic present, do not. If you're not prepared to handle it, please, you can make it 100 times worse by beginning to recite the Our Father, using holy water. Those are sacramentals of the church. You're using holy water, blessed oils, salt, sage. You could really cause major consequences for doing that if you're not prepared and you don't know how to then respond. So what you do is you say, okay, if you have a situation and you're helping a family and you realize this is demonic, then reach out to clergy who are validly trained to do this. This is what you do. And because this is why we've devoted our entire life to this ministry. Because you can actually, by actually wanting to help and staying there, you could actually cause much more damage than you could if you were to say, okay, we're going to step away, we're going to pray, and we're going to call clergy in to help.
Right. And like our team, for example, we've always said to ourselves, and this is one of the reasons why I took it personally upon myself to study more about demonology, aside from what we do, because God forbid if we ever run into a situation that we can't handle ourselves. I've always told our team, I don't want to put my team members and people I care about in harm's way. So I rather know what's going on and not step into a situation I can't handle. So I'm definitely going to pass it on to people like you guys, handing it to people who are more experienced that can handle that situation, because I don't want to hurt those people more than they're already scared.
And that can absolutely, and it does happen quite often, because
Yeah.
teams will want to help families, and then they begin to use holy water and salt and begin to pray. You got to understand, what you're doing then is you're actually performing the minor rite of exorcism without
Mm.
even knowing it, because the minute that you begin to start saying prayers of expulsion, you're expelling the demon in the name of Christ, and you start using sacramentals, you're forcing the entity to manifest itself. And when you use holy water, when you use incense, when you use blessed oil, that is religious objects, blessed objects, for the sole purpose of forcing that entity to manifest. And when it does, now it's going to retaliate 100 times fold when you leave. And now the family has to deal with even and I've had families literally, after teams began to start doing the holy water and stuff, it caused such severe activity. When the team left, the families have left their homes and they will refuse. I have cases right now that I'm trying to get to them. The family will not go back into their home because of that very same situation. A team went in, they knew it was demonic, they began to provoke. Remember, that's provoking. That is provoking. When you begin to say prayers and use holy water, you're provoking, you're forcing the entity to manifest. Right. And so what happened is this team continued, and they didn't know it. They were just trying to help. And unfortunately, it caused severe activity to one of the kids getting hurt, and they actually left, and they won't return back to the home.
Yeah. Actually, that's what we just talked about was one of my wife's questions in the chat. She's helping moderate the chat room for us in there, which I always thank her for doing that over the air. Of course, love you. And we have Tony Rathman's in the chat. We have Anthony Simonelli. We have Deacon Tommy Golden.
Yeah, Deacon Tommy is studying for the priesthood for the United States Catholic Church, nice. and he has a calling as well to serve in the demonic field. So, nice. If you would keep our seminarians and in your prayer, and of course Deacon Tommy and Deacon Anito, who are progressing into the priesthood.
Yeah. And speaking of that, what I really like what you guys do, you have night prayer that you offer and stuff. With the pandemic and everything, how is like being able to like be in church in person, or how difficult, or the challenges that you have doing things virtually, or like what are some of the difficult things that you have to take on?
When I had a parish, I don't have a parish anymore because my ministry, quite honestly, is I just simply don't have time for parish ministry. And not only that, but it takes a great deal of time and even money to start up a parish, because we don't get paid as clergy. We don't receive a paycheck. We don't. So we have to fund it our own. And to be honest, when I had a parish, I loved it. I really did love it. But it took so much of my time for administration duties. The complication becomes when you have Mass. As Catholics, we have Mass, we celebrate the sacraments, and we have communion. And obviously, you can't distribute communion to people. So that is the one major issue that you have. Yeah. But we have found that night prayer is we do that Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Everybody, and night prayer is it's called Compline. And this is what I prayed when I was in the seminary. Priests pray this every single night. And so we pray, and so we want to share this with you. It's very structured, but we pray the Psalms, and then we have a reading, and we close it out with a couple of meditation songs. We have a meditation song in the Salve Regina. But this is what we did. That's what I did when I was in the Roman seminary. And every night we had night prayer, and we would do it at 9:00. And no matter how stressed out I was with studies, because I was doing 21 hours of college, and then really, intense, deep, intense studies with philosophy and theology. It was just nice to be able just to walk into the chapel, and the only thing that's lit, the lights were very dim, and the candles were lit. You can smell the incense. It was just a nice way to end the night. And that's what I try to share that with other people.
Right. No, that's my wife totally misses going to church. I know that.
I understand. And we have a Bible study on Sunday. So I do Bible study as well on Sunday at 3 p.m. And people can, and then our deacons
Mm.
They will do homilies on the readings, and our seminarians will do reflections. So we
Yeah.
play that as well. So you can, we're introducing them to you guys. So, but
Right.
Deacon Tommy's been around for quite some time. Tommy Golden's been around for quite some time in the paranormal, and actually loves the paranormal as much as I do, and probably many of you.
Right. My wife says your night prayer is wonderful.
Oh well, thank you, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So my next question is, for those that are looking to, maybe get into demonology or become an exorcist,
Mm.
because if they feel they have a calling to do that in the field or out of the field, what would be your recommendations? How do they? Where can you guide those people? What kind of training can they do, or what kind of steps can they take?
The first thing that I would tell anybody is to pray, and really and we say that and people are like, okay, yeah, no, I really do legitimately mean this. Pray, take this to prayer, and ask, really find out why you're wanting to pursue this, and be honest, and be truthful. And that's the first thing, because ego has no room at all in the demonic field. Ego stands for edging God out. And if you have an ego, you're doing it for ego purposes, you're going to find yourself in some serious trouble, serious trouble. And so I would tell people, if you think that you have a calling to the priesthood, that is one thing. But let me just make this very, very clear. And we tell every seminarian who comes into the United States Old Catholic Church, if you're coming into the United States Old Catholic Church because you want to be an exorcist, you're wasting your time and you're wasting hours. Because I'm a bishop, but I'm a priest. I am a priest who happens to be an exorcist. I am not an exorcist who happens to be a priest. That is two completely different things. And so ministry and serving the poor and helping people, that's priority one. That's why you want to be a priest. You want to help people. You want to teach people theology. You want to teach the sacraments. You got to be in love with the sacraments, the church, the ministry. Now, if you want to, if you want to be involved in demonology, then you can. And if you want to help the paranormal clergy, you can contact Rich Valdez, and then Rich will teach people, but he's very strict, because a lot of people do this just for giggles on a Saturday night, and
Mm.
Rich has no desire to waste his time because he's busy like everybody else.
Right. Yeah, because I just, the demonology area of everything has grown very largely over
Sure.
the year. So that's why I thought of that question, because
Yeah.
I really want to guide people and, steer them in the right direction, because you really need to have really good training before you
That's
know,
right.
and take it for, you know, like, you want to take it seriously.
Well, you have to. I mean, because
Yeah.
this is, look, I can't stress this enough. This, you have to take it seriously. You're dealing with God here.
Yeah.
So let's make this very clear. You're dealing with the Alpha and the Omega, the creator of all things. And if you don't take this seriously, then you better just leave it alone 1,000,000%. This is as serious as it gets. It
Yeah.
doesn't get any more serious than that level.
Mm-hmm.
You are you are I stress that. I can't, there are no words that I could use to possibly convey how strongly I feel that this is one of the most important decisions that you will ever have to make. With the
Yeah.
decision is not, oh, I'm going to decide to be an exorcist or a demonologist. Nope, it's not your decision. The
Right.
decision is to answer God's call that
Right.
He has chosen for you.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Right. Yeah, so I remember that question kind of being poised towards me once during an
Yeah.
interview on my Strange Oddities podcast, when I had a couple of demonologists on my show, and they had asked me, like, would you be interested in being a demonologist? And I said, I have no interest in it, because I just feel like it's not my calling. I feel like it should be a calling
It
for
is.
both. and I'm like, I just can't like dive into something that's not a calling for me, because
That's right.
like you said, like how you stress that. So
It's
I'm
not
glad you.
something. It's not something you choose. It is something
Right,
that God chooses for you. You
right,
choose whether or not to accept His call or not. That is your
right.
free will. But if the problem is if you're saying, well, I'm just going to be an exorcist today.
Yeah,
Well, there's a problem with that
right.
because that's ego.
Yeah,
But if God is calling you to do this, then there are proper paths. There are proper paths for you to take,
yeah,
and you should do it, especially if you feel that you're being called to serve in this ministry.
right,
Then you really do have to take this quite seriously.
right. Exactly. Another question in the chat, real quick. Good question. How do you make or distinguish between someone with a mental problem over someone that possibly has that's possessed?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that's really important to know is I'm not a licensed psychiatrist, and so I don't have a degree in advanced, psychology. However, in the paranormal clergy, we do have a mental health therapist, a professional. Actually, she is licensed, and she does have patients. So what we do is, if anyone claims that believe that they are being possessed, well, first of all, we have to gather all the information, and they must speak to her, because she does really have to do an assessment. And then based upon that, if she says, well, she doesn't feel like that it's a threat to anyone or that there's anything there as far as mental illness, then we require them to have a licensed psychiatrist administer a psychological evaluation. This is non-negotiable. And if anyone ever performs an exorcism on someone without having a psychological evaluation, you know what? I really truly believe those people should be held accountable and be placed in prison,
Yeah,
because and I feel very strongly about that, because you perform an exorcism on someone with dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality. You create another personality. Do you understand that? You can create a completely different identity
yeah,
within that person. Or if a person is if they're paranoid schizophrenic, and you perform an exorcism on this person without validating with the psychological evaluation, you could put them in a paranoid state and they could commit suicide.
yeah.
So it is absolutely inexcusable to perform an exorcism on anyone without having a psychological evaluation done, period. That is,
Right,
period. But you have to understand that a person who is possessed will have knowledge of future events or hidden things. For example, if you have a cross in your hand and no one else knows, and the demonic will say that cross is not going to help you, they will have superhuman strength. However, you have to be careful, because that could also be someone could be on meth, or they could be on PCP. They could be on medications or illegal drugs that would cause them to have superhuman strength.
right.
They will speak in unknown languages. Now, here's what I think is very fascinating, and I'm noticing this is happening a lot too in the paranormal. But they will say that they did an investigation, and then this person will begin to speak Latin, and then I ask them a question. I say, "Well, do you speak Latin?" No.
Yeah,
Have you ever learned Latin? No. Then how do you know that they were speaking Latin? It's kind of like all of a sudden, or well, that person was speaking Aramaic.
yeah, yeah.
Do you know Aramaic? Can you say the Our Father in Aramaic? And they're like, no. It's like, well, again, so you're how do you then define that this person? So that's a problem. But a person who is possessed will, like, for example, if I do, when I'm doing the an exorcism, and will speak the Our Father in Aramaic. So it starts with Abun Nasmaya Makara Shamuk. And then what they will do is they will speak the Our Father backwards in Aramaic, backwards, as a form of mockery. Now, I've studied Aramaic for years. I cannot. There's no way I could do it backwards in Aramaic. I wouldn't even know how to even begin to do that. Or levitation could occur.
Right.
Smells, the horrible, horrible, god awful, rotten odors, or you have a religious items that are near them and they don't know what you're doing, and there's a severe reaction to that. So there's so much to this. And let's just say that someone goes to the psychological evaluation, the medication that they're taking is not causing any of these hallucinations, that you've spoken to the doctor and there's no explanation for what is occurring. An exorcist will go into that home on the day of the exorcism, and we do things that the person has no idea what we're doing. None. They don't even see us doing it. But what we're doing is forcing the entity to manifest itself, and the person goes into transient possession. The demonic will then make it known that they are aware of what you're doing. And that's when you begin the ritual.
Right. And then in the order of things, oppression is first, right?
Well, actually, there's a lot of talk about the old saying, demonic infestation, oppression, possession. And really, there's more to it than that.
Okay.
There's two types of demonic activity. You have ordinary demonic activity. So like it says, hey, Matt, just come on, man. Just spend $1 more. Just take one more drink. Just one more drink. Just so basically they use our weaknesses and they cause the manipulation for us to sin, to fall. That's ordinary demonic activity. Then you have extraordinary demonic activity. Now that's actually classified into 4 categories. You have demonic infestation, where the demonic infests itself in the home. Then you have demonic oppression. And at that level, the demonic is beginning to physically attack the individual. So it breaks down, literally it breaks down the will. Your sleeping pattern is eradicated. It's beginning to punch you and bite you and pinch you and hurt you, cause problems. Then you have demonic obsession. And demonic obsession is when it begins to attack your intellect. You begin to see things, you begin to hear things. And what it's doing now is breaking down your intellect and your will. And people say, but we got to understand this. This is a process. When it breaks down your will, could be months where your sleep pattern is completely eradicated. You're not getting sleep. You're getting punched. You're getting hit. You're getting scratched. You're getting bitten every single night. Imagine for months this goes on with maybe an hour, maybe of sleep a night. That's it. You get to a point where you can't even continue. You can't stand. You're completely exhausted, physically and mentally exhausted. You can't fight. That's when you have possession.
Wow. Yeah, it is scary. My wife said it's so scary, and it is. It's a serious situation. You gotta have strong faith, Yeah. But we're guys. If you're tuning in late, we have Mr. Bishop James Long on Strange Oddities Podcast. We were talking about the differences between a demonologist and an exorcist in the very beginning of the show. We got into a little brief history and background of how Mr. Bishop James Long got his calling. We're getting really heavy into the discussion of demonic activity and knowing the differences and looking for the signs, and there's a lot of those type of questions in the chat room going on. But I'm glad you brought up schizophrenia, because I know, with the studies that I've done and people that I've learned from, there's a fine line of, the schizophrenia and mental illness and, a person possibly having possession. What's your thoughts on that Germany case where that inspired the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I always tell people they should watch, because I think that's a great way of seeing the care of somebody and how it can affect a person if their mental stability isn't looked after by doctors and being evaluated properly and cared for.
Well, actually, when I was in the seminary, I learned a great deal of this case. And actually, I have many of the case files and actual sound bites, real sound bites, not the sound bites that you hear on YouTube. Those are actually fake. Many of them are fake. But I will tell you, her name was Anneliese Michael. She lived in Germany, and she passed away in 1976. And she underwent an exorcism exorcisms in 1975, and it was horrible what she endured. She really is. It was terrible. She died of malnutrition, dehydration was the actual official cause, and that's actually very common. And the reason being because when someone is possessed and you try to give them substance of life like food or water, they begin to get violently ill and they regurgitate. So the pea soup in The Exorcist actually is true. It's legitimate. So that's why when I perform an exorcism, I have a medical team that's actually there monitoring the vitals of the person who's possessed. Because you have to understand, when you're dehydrated and it's severe dehydration, your organs begin to shut down. And so the person can go into cardiac arrest or stroke. And so this is very, very serious. So what happened, she was 16 and she developed epileptic seizures, and she was actually diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. And so she was determined to be depressed, and unfortunately was treated in a psychiatric hospital. And that is when she actually first began to describe seeing ghastly figures and hearing things and seeing things, and it really affected her. And so when she was 20, got to a point where she became very intolerant to religious objects. She began hearing voices, and she was very devout. She was a very devout Roman Catholic, and her condition actually became worse. And so she was convinced that, and her family was too, that she needed an exorcism. And so there were 2 priests that performed an exorcism, but unfortunately, that she had passed away because she had epilepsy and she had those issues, but her family felt that these medicines that the doctors were giving her were absolutely not helping her at all. And she truly believed that they were not helping her. She believed that the only way that she was going to get any help is through the exorcisms. And when she passed away, she was 68 pounds. 68 pounds when she passed away.
Yeah.
She was only 23 years old when she passed away.
Wow.
And there was actually 67 exorcism sessions that were performed on her, and there were usually between 1 and 2 a week, and they could last up to 4 to 6 hours for each one. Yeah. And so that was actually a 10-month span. So I will tell you, from all the things that I have seen on that particular case, there's no question that she endured possession. None.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's why I recommend watching that, because that can really educate people of like what's involved and in the study of a person and what they endure.
Well, if you there were some embellishments in the movie.
Oh yeah.
But now there were many things that were actually true. When she would pray, she had hardwood floors, and her room was actually quite small. But when she would pray, the priests actually in their official reports, they would see her literally being raised up and slammed on the wooden floor. But it would happen so often that it literally completely destroyed the cartilage in her knee. So she couldn't stand anymore. And she would grab a hold when it was happening. She would grab a hold of the wall with her nails to try to stop this, and her nails would unfortunately be ripped off because she was trying to stop this demonic from lifting her up and slamming her, and often, and it's terrible. But if you really want to see what an exorcist goes through, you need to see the movie The Rite. That's
a good movie.
You have to watch it. It is it is a great, because I've spoken several times to Father Gary Thomas, and Father Gary Thomas is who the movie is after. And I will tell you that movie, if you really want to see what an exorcist endures, watch it, and then you'll know.
Yeah. Can you, if it's all right with you, can you tell our audience like what Bishop James Long has endured during your exorcisms, or would you share some of your most maybe memorable cases real quick? I know we don't have a lot of time with Bishop James Long, but we can maybe get into that a little bit.
I will say the first case that I had, I was not the primary exorcist. I was the assistant. My first case. And it was a girl, and we went into her room, and it was just death is the only way that I could describe it. During the exorcism, she suffered from transient possession, and so during the rite, when we began to do the litany of the saints, there's a certain part in the ritual where you check the eyelids to determine whether or not the person is going into possession. And as I lift her eyelids up, they're just solid black. There were no whites in the eye. It was solid black, but it was I could see my reflection, and I couldn't move. I could not move. I was like, it was concrete. My feet were concrete, and it felt like a predator. What the best way to describe it? It felt like I was prey, and I was like a small little rabbit getting ready to be devoured. I mean, that's exactly what it felt like. I felt truly like I was prey, and I was looking in the eyes of the main alpha predator. And I remember I couldn't move, I couldn't think, I couldn't talk. It was almost like I've surrendered myself, like I know what's going to happen next, And so, but the exorcist then grabbed me by the collar and did a blessing on me and deliverance, and we continued. That was, I read all my life on demonology, and I was taught, and I knew the right backwards and forwards. But when you're actually in the presence of a person who's truly possessed, it'll change your life.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't imagine the changes that. Yeah. Yeah, but thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Wow. But we're getting Mr. Bishop James Long has his own show during the week. He also does night prayer online. With all his viewers and followers that do nightly prayer is available. I'm not sure how many nights you do the prayer.
Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. Mm-hmm.
Right. And where can people get your contact info if they want to learn or get educated on what you're doing these days,
Sure.
events? I know you got a couple of websites.
Well, they can go to bishopjameslong.com and they can click on the paranormal course link. And that's where you can sign up for your angelology, demonology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. And remember, 100% of that goes to funding the ministry. And so that's all online, 100% online. You learn at your own pace. And so a lot of people seem to really like that. You can also go to facebook.com/Bishop James Long. And that's where you can listen to tonight. You can watch night prayer and participate. And you can also do that for Bible study, which we have on Sundays at 3 p.m. What I like to do on Bible study is we take the Sunday readings, but I like to go into the history and teach you exactly what was happening during the time that passage was written, so that you can kind of get an idea and a visual of, okay, wow, this was what was happening. I think that's important to educate people on the history. So what was going on, when this was happening. And I think if you do that, people would really, they'll appreciate that a little bit more. I think scripture comes more to life, when you do that. For example, I'll tell you a really quick story.
Yeah, sure.
Remember the story of Jesus this is why I love Christ. Jesus, when the prostitute was found, that having relations with a married man. And of course, all the married men came around. They had these massive stones and they were getting ready to stone her to death. We all know the story. And then Jesus, it's fascinating because man's law said she should have been stoned to death. That's what man's law. But Jesus comes on the scene and then he bends down and he writes in the sand and then he stands up. Do you know what he was writing?
No.
The sins of every single one of those men who were holding the rock, getting ready to stone that woman. And that's why he stood up and said, now, those of you without any sin, you cast the first stone. See, when this is why when you read history, when you read scripture, and you think, man, but that's why for me, I loved the whole mission of Christ was about love and compassion to people. Defending the prostitutes, defending the lepers, the people who were outcasts, sick people who weren't considered clean, defending the tax collectors, defending the drunkards. I mean, defending people who were less than. And when you understand that part of Christ, what is there not to love?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. One more quick question, if you don't mind, because I know you got to run in a little bit. One really good question I thought of is there was a few articles floating around a couple of years ago. I'm not sure where it is now. I had it in my notes, and I'm not quite sure what happened to it because I have so many windows open in the background. Anyway, the Vatican, I know, has kind of stepped forward in the limelight, in the public about looking for more people to train and be more knowledgeable in, exorcism and stuff. What's your thoughts about the Vatican being more involved publicly about it?
Well, I think keep in mind that they will teach you about the demonology and exorcism and possession, but that does not mean that you are going to be an exorcist. seen as in the Roman Catholic Church. And there are some, unfortunately, and this is very sad, but unfortunately, there are some individuals in the community who are now saying that they are working cases for the Vatican in demonic cases, and yet they're not Roman Catholic. That's simply not true. So just understand that it's sad that people are saying that, but unfortunately they are. So, but no, they will teach you demonology. And actually, I was going to go to Rome. If I had stayed in the Roman Catholic seminary and was graduated, I would have been to Rome. I would have went to Rome and actually studied and taken the intense courses on actually how to actually perform the rite and actually present it and etc. I was taught the rite, but there's a big difference between going to actually to Rome and participating in an exorcism and actually reading about it. Two different things.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I hope, I mean, this topic was very heavy for Strange Oddities podcast, but I learned a lot, I mean, I know a little bit about demonology. There's a lot more that I need to learn about. But I'm glad that we had you on the show. Is there any advice real quick you want to give shout out to anybody, any events coming up? What's your last words before we part ways with Mr. Bishop James Long?
I always tell people that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And so don't begin to see you through the eyes of someone who doesn't value you as a human being. So just always be kind, be loving, be compassionate, and just continue to do the good work.
Nice. Any events coming up that you want to share?
No, I'm not really interested in doing events, and because that's not for me. It's not something important. I just ask that you pray for our seminarians, and that you pray for our clergy and the United States Catholic Church.
Yeah, and other than the night prayer, I know you do your own podcast sometimes. I know you do your own show sometimes. Where can people watch that?
Yeah, just facebook.com/Bishop James Long for night prayer and Bible study.
Okay, great. So I hope you had fun on the Strange Oddities podcast. I know I did. So Bishop James Long has to go and run and take care of stuff. But I'm very grateful that you were a guest on the show. Guys, stay with me because I'm still going to be running the show for another half hour till 9 o'clock. But Bishop, thank you so much for being a guest. Yep. I really appreciate it. We'll be in touch as always. We stay in touch, keep in touch. I'm glad that we have, and we'll have to do this again sometime. I always wanted to do a big panel discussion with quite a few of demonologists and exorcists all together on one big panel. I think that would be really cool.
Very, very interesting. Well, you guys have a beautiful evening and a wonderful, safe Halloween.
Yes, you too. Enjoy your Halloween, and thanks again for being a guest.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Take care. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed Bishop James Long as a guest on the Strange Oddities podcast. Night prayer at 9 p.m. I highly suggest it. Go check it out. Check him out on Facebook. He does a lot of live videos on Facebook. Bishop James Long. It's also bishopjameslong.com if you want to go check him out. I usually highlight the guests on the Strange Oddities podcast Facebook page. So we have a lot of people in the chat. We have Elise Carlson. She's in the chat. Want to say hello to Elise. We have Kim Libby. Deacon Tommy Golden. We have Anthony Simonelli. We have Joe C. He's in there as Giuseppe. I want to say hello to those guys. Tony Rathman was listening from Entity Voices. Want to say hello to those guys. We have Karma Wild. If I pronounce your last name, if I mispronounce it, I apologize. But we have Karma Wild in the chat, so I want to say hello to them. We have Mr. Roy Poole in the chat. Gary, how you doing? Guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. We had Bishop James Long. So the topic was the differences between a demonologist and an exorcist, which he greatly explained. I thought he really explained it very well. It's a calling, and people got to be careful when they think I want to learn about demonology, it's a calling that you have to have. It's a calling from God. It's a calling that you have to have strong faith. You have to have strong will. And it's a very serious thing that you get into, because if you don't take it seriously, we were talking about the vulnerability that paranormal investigators have, because you don't have enough knowledge of what you're dealing with, and you could cause a lot more damage, mental damage, emotional damage, physical damage, to a family that's calling you to help them and help. Again, don't get me wrong, helping a family is great, but if you don't have that proper training, you could really hurt somebody very badly. And I don't think I would want to take that responsibility. That's a huge responsibility to take on. So we have, we got a lot of people in here. Shelly Blask is in the chat. We have Gwen Clayton. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we had Gwen say, if you do a panel discussion, I would like to see him and Stephanie Connolly Reisner. All right. Yeah, I always wanted to do like a demonologist and exorcist panel with quite a few people, maybe like a little roundtable discussion of demonology and the topic of demonic hauntings or possessions and stuff like that. I would love to get Carl Johnson and James Anito on with that. Bishop James Long involved. Maybe John Zaffis, if anybody can get a connection to John would be great. Yeah, I think that would be a really entertaining panel discussion. Thank you guys. Kim Libby said, I have very interesting shows and topics. I appreciate that. That's what the Strange Oddities podcast is all about. You just never know who's going to be a guest on the Strange Oddities podcast. I have big TV icons that show up once in a while. I've had Sig Hansen of Deadliest Catch was one of my biggest guests on the Strange Oddities podcast. Yeah, we cover conspiracy theories, we cover the supernatural, we cover cryptozoology like Bigfoot and lake monsters, cryptids, we cover UFOs, government cover-ups, mysteries, the paranormal. We cover a lot of things other than just ghosts. That's my passion. Not just ghosts. I think just covering ghosts is okay, but it's kind of boring. Me, the paranormal, it's a broad subject, that covers all that stuff. Guys, I'm rebroadcasting on the KGRAradio.com. You can always catch our show on Friday nights if you're an overnighter. Catch the rebroadcast on KGRA Radio at 2 a.m. Eastern Time and 11 p.m. Pacific Time. They had me on the Pacific time zone over there, so this way I would get some good numbers from the West Coast people. But you can always catch the show again on our YouTube channel, and I can't stress enough, guys, please subscribe to the YouTube channel with the little bell at the top right corner. Just go to our main YouTube channel page and subscribe if you don't mind. Follow our Facebook page. All the information about upcoming guests is going to be on our Facebook page. That's where I make my announcements. So if you want to follow who I'm going to have on the show, that's where to go. We do have a website, guys, strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. That's our website. It's not much, but, it's there. What else? Before I miss anything. My next big upcoming guest, guys. I'm not exactly sure the date yet, but at the end of the month, I'm going to have globally recognized archaeologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, my friend from Egypt, Cairo, Egypt. I've interviewed him in the past. I do keep in touch with him from time to time. If you guys like Indiana Jones type stuff and you like the pyramids, the Sphinx, archaeology in itself, I have a love for archaeology. I love Indiana Jones. I'm going to have Dr. Zahi Hawass at the end of the month. I'm just working out a date. It might be on a different day of the week, maybe on a Sunday morning. I'm not quite sure. I'll make the announcement, put it on our Facebook page, but I'm really excited to announce Dr. Zahi Hawass is going to be on the Strange Oddities podcast, so I'm excited for that. So those are my big announcements. I don't know. Again, as a paranormal investigator, guys, I get frustrated because when it comes to this topic of demonology, demons, and exorcism and all that, TV shows do things for ratings, and they're teaching people the wrong things about demonology and possessions and stuff like that. They do that stuff for ratings. And, you know, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen, but what I am saying is you have to be real careful when it comes to this subject because you have to have strong faith, you have to have strong will. And believe me, if you have a demonic haunting, you're gonna know it. Um, Believe me, it's something that you don't want to mess with. You'll know it when you have a demonic haunting going on. So, want to thank you guys for all tuning in. We had a time change for tonight's show. Usually it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and I run it for about an hour and a half from 8 p.m. to 9:30. We started it early just to accommodate Mr. Bishop James Long tonight. I started at 7:30, so it's been over an hour already. So I want to wish everybody, to be well. Once again, I always say this. Guys, the men and women who serve our country, the veterans, the military people, PD, fire department, EMTs, nurses, doctors, everybody that's out there, serving our country during these challenging times, that we are experiencing. Guys, thank you for serving our country and, taking care of us and, be well, and I respect everybody that, takes care of us. But God bless you guys. Thank you for listening to the Strange Oddities podcast. I will be back next week, next Thursday at regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to wish everybody a great night as I play our exit video. Thanks for the questions, you guys, in the chat. And want to wish everybody a great weekend. And thanks to my beautiful wife in the chat for helping us out. And I'm going to play the video. Here we go, guys. Have a great night, guys. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Strange Oddities podcast. You can listen to the rebroadcast on the KGRA radio. Check out kgraradio.com for the rebroadcast at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. You can catch the Strange Oddities podcast live every week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Please follow our YouTube channel for our live weekly show at 8 p.m. If you like the show, please give us feedback. Email us at strangeodditiespodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. Tune in every week, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel. You can also look us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page where all the news and information about upcoming guests and anything Strange Oddities Podcast is doing. Go to our Facebook page, give us a like, and give us a shout. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And again, thanks again for the KGRA for rebroadcasting the Strange Oddities Podcast.